An amphibious warfare ship is an amphibious vehicle warship employed to land and support ground forces, such as Marines, on enemy territory during an amphibious assault. Specialized shipping can be divided into two types, most crudely described as ships and craft. In general, the ships carry the troops from the port of embarkation to the drop point for the assault, and the craft carry the troops from the ship to the shore. Amphibious assaults taking place over short distances can also involve the shore-to-shore technique, where landing craft go directly from the port of embarkation to the assault point. Some tank landing ships may also be able to land troops and equipment directly onto shore after traveling long distances, such as the Ivan Rogov-class landing ship. In the days of sail, ships' boats were used as landing craft. These rowing boats were sufficient, if inefficient, in an era when Marines were effectively light infantry, participating mostly in small-scale campaigns in far-flung colonies against less well-equipped indigenous opponents. In order to support amphibious operations during the landing in Pisagua by carrying significant quantities of cargo and landing troops directly onto an unimproved shore, the government of Chile built flat-bottomed landing craft, called chalanas. They transported 1,200 men in the first landing, and took on board 600 men in less than 2 hours for the second landing. During World War I, the mass mobilization of troops equipped with rapid-fire weapons quickly rendered such boats obsolete. Initial landings during the Gallipoli campaign took place in unmodified rowing boats that were extremely vulnerable to attack from the Ottoman shore defenses. In February 1915, orders were placed for the design of purpose-built landing craft. The design was created in 4 days, resulting in an order for 200 X-lighters, with a spoon-shaped bow to take shelving beaches and a drop-down frontal ramp. The first use took place after they had been towed to the Aegean and performed successfully in the 6 August landing at Suvla Bay of 9th Corps, commanded by Commander Edward Unwin. X-lighters, known to the soldiers as Beetles, carried about 500 men, displaced 135 tons, and were based on London barges being 105 feet 6 inches long, 21 feet wide, and 7 feet 6 inches deep. The engines mainly ran on heavy oil, and ran at a speed of approximately 5 knots. The sides of the ships were bulletproof, and was designed with a ramp on the bow for disembarkation. A plan was devised to land British heavy tanks from pontoons in support of the Third Battle of Ypres, but this was abandoned. During the interwar period, the combination of the negative experience at Gallipoli and economic stringency contributed to the delay in procuring equipment and adopting a universal doctrine for amphibious operations in the Royal Navy. Despite this outlook, the British produced the motor landing craft in 1920, based on their experience with the early Beetle armored transport. The craft could put a medium tank directly onto a beach. From 1924, it was used with landing boats in annual exercises in amphibious landings. A prototype motor landing craft, designed by J. Samuel White of Cowes, was built and first sailed in 1926. It weighed 16 tons and had a box-like appearance, having a square bow and stern. To prevent fouling of the propellers in a craft destined to spend time in surf and possibly be beached, a crude waterjet propulsion system was devised by White's designers. A Hotchkiss petrol engine drove a centrifugal pump which produced a jet of water, pushing the craft ahead or stern, and steering it, according to how the jet was directed. Speed was 5 to 6 knot, and its beaching capacity was good. By 1930, 3 MLC were operated by the Royal Navy. The United States revived and experimented in their approach to amphibious warfare between 1913 and the mid-1930s, when the United States Navy and United States Marine Corps became interested in setting up advanced bases in opposing countries during wartime. The prototype Advanced Base Force officially evolved into the Fleet Marine Force, FMF, in 1933. In 1939, during the annual fleet landing exercises, the FMF became interested in the military potential of Andrew Higgins' design of a powered, shallow draft boat. In the run-up to World War II, many specialized landing craft, both for infantry and vehicles, were developed. In November 1938, the British Inter-Service Training and Development Centre proposed a new type of landing craft. The specifications were to weigh less than 10 long tons, to be able to carry the 31 men of a British Army platoon and 5 assault engineers or signallers, and to be so shallow drafted as to be able to land them, with only up to their knees, in 18 inches of water. All of these specifications made the landing craft assault. A separate set of requirements were laid down for a vehicle and supplies carrier, although previously the two roles had been combined in the motor landing craft. J.S. White of Cowes built a prototype to the Fleming design. 8 weeks later the craft was doing trials on the River Clyde. All landing craft designs must find a compromise between two divergent priorities. The qualities that make a good seaboat are opposite those that make a craft suitable for beaching. The craft had a hull built of double diagonal mahogany planking. The sides were plated with 10-pound stit armor, a heat-treated steel based on D1 steel, in this case Hatfield's Resista 1/4. The landing craft assault remained the most common British and Commonwealth landing craft of World War II, and the humblest vessel admitted to the books of the Royal Navy on D-Day. Prior to July 1942, these craft were referred to as Assault Landing Craft, ALC, but Landing Craft, Assault, LCA, was used thereafter to conform with the joint US-UK nomenclature system. The Landing Craft Infantry was a stepped-up amphibious assault ship, developed in response to a British request for a vessel capable of carrying and landing substantially more troops than the smaller Landing Craft Assault, LCA. The result was a small steel ship that could land 200 troops, traveling from rear bases on its own bottom, at a speed of up to 15 knots. The original British design was envisioned as being a one-time use vessel which would simply ferry the troops across the English Channel, and were considered an expendable vessel. As such, no troop sleeping accommodations were placed in the original design. This was changed shortly after initial use of these ships, when it was discovered that many missions would require overnight accommodations. The first LCILS entered service in 1943, chiefly with the Royal Navy and the United States Navy. Some 923 LCI were built in 10 American shipyards, and 211 provided under Lend-Lease to the Royal Navy. Following the successful development of the infantry-carrying LCA by the Inter-Service Training and Development Center, ISTDC, attention turned to the means of efficiently delivering a tank to a beach in 1938. Inquiries were made of the Army as to the heaviest tank that might be employed in a landing operation. The Army wanted to be able to land a 12-ton tank, but the ISTDC, anticipating weight increases in future tank models, specified 16 tons berthing for mechanized landing craft designs. Another limit on any design was the need to land tanks and other vehicles in less than approximately 2.5 feet of water. Design work began at John I. Thornycroft Limited in May 1938, with trials completing in February 1940. Constructed of steel and selectively clad with armor plate, this shallow draft barge-like boat with a crew of 6 could ferry a tank of 16 long tons to shore at 7 knots. Depending on the weight of the tank to be transported, the craft might be lowered into the water by its davits already loaded, or could have the tank placed in it after being lowered into the water. Although the Royal Navy had the landing craft mechanized at its disposal, in 1940, Prime Minister Winston Churchill demanded an amphibious vessel capable of landing at least 3 36-ton heavy tanks directly onto a beach, able to sustain itself at sea for at least a week, and inexpensive and easy to build. Admiral Mond, director of the Inter-Service Training and Development Center, which had developed the landing craft Assault, gave the job to naval architect Sir Roland Baker, who within 3 days completed initial drawings for a 152-foot landing craft, with a 29-foot, 8.8 meters, beam, and a shallow draft. Shipbuilders Fairfields and John Brown agreed to work out details for the design under the guidance of the Admiralty Experimental Works at Hassler. Tank tests with models soon determined the characteristics of the craft, indicating that it would make 10 knots on engines delivering about 700 horsepower. Designated the LCT Mark I, 20 were ordered in July 1940, and a further 10 in October 1940. One of the most recent innovations is the LCAC, Landing Craft Air Cushioned. These large hovercraft further expand the range of conditions under which an amphibious assault can take place, and increase the speed of transfer of assets from ship to shore. Ground effect vehicles, which straddle the line between aircraft and ship, have also been proposed for the role in the past. Amphibious assault submarines, while proposed during the 1950s and almost brought to actual construction by the Soviet Union in the 1960s, are currently not being designed. However, if the predictions of military experts such as John Keegan or others hold true, and surface shipping becomes extremely dangerous during future wars of evenly matched powers, due to satellite reconnaissance and anti-ship missiles, then transport and amphibious assault submarines might deserve another look. The United States Navy's Light Amphibious Warship Program seeks to procure 28 to 30 new light amphibious ships, starting in 2023. Modern U.S. Navy amphibious assault ships project power and maintain presence by serving as the cornerstone of the Amphibious Ready Group, ARG, or Expeditionary Strike Group, ESG. These ships transport and land elements of the Marine Expeditionary Unit, MU, or Marine Expeditionary Brigade, MEB, with a combination of aircraft and landing craft. The America-class LHAs and Wasp-class LHDs provide the Marine Corps with a means of ship-to-shore movement by helicopter, in addition to movement by landing craft. LHAs, and later LHDs, have been participants in major humanitarian assistance, occupation and combat operations, in which the United States has been involved. Such operations have included participating as launch platforms for Marine Corps expeditionary forces into Afghanistan during Operation Enduring Freedom in 2001 and 2002, Iraq and Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003, and humanitarian support after the catastrophic tsunami in 2004. During Operation Iraqi Freedom, 2 LHDs served as Harrier carriers, launching an air group of AV-8B attack aircraft against targets inside Iraq. In 2004, LHDs were used to transport thousands of Marines and their equipment to Iraq and Afghanistan for combat operations. Post-Hurricane Katrina support was provided in New Orleans by LHD-7, Iwo Jima, where thousands of police, fire and rescue personnel were hosted on board during recovery operations, and Iwo Jima operated as the central command and control hub. The USS America, LHA-6, class ships replaced the original 5 Tarawa-class LHAs, which have all been decommissioned. USS America, LHA-6, along with the future USS Tripoli, LHA-7, are LHD variants optimized for aviation capability. America-class ships are designed to accommodate the Marine Corps' future air combat element, ACE, including F-35B Joint Strike Fighter, JSF, and MV-22 Osprey, with additional aviation maintenance capability and increased fuel capacities, while also providing additional cargo stowage capacities, and enabling a broader, more flexible command and control capability. The propulsion plant and electrical distribution and auxiliary systems designed and built for USS Mackinac Island, LHD-8, are also used aboard USS America-class ships. USS America, LHA-6, was delivered to the U.S. Navy on April 10, 2014. USS Tripoli, LHA-7, commissioned on July 15, 2020, while Bougainville, LHA-8, is currently under construction at Huntington Ingalls Industries, Hawaii, in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and is expected to join the fleet in 2024. LHA-6 and LHA-7, commonly referred to as Flight Zero ships, contain key differences from the LHD class to include an enlarged hangar deck, enhanced aviation maintenance facilities, increased aviation fuel capacity, additional aviation storerooms, removal of the well deck, and an electronically reconfigurable C4ISR suite. LHA-8 will be the first Flight 1 ship, reincorporating a well deck to enhance expeditionary war fighting capabilities, while maintaining the principal aviation characteristics of the Flight Zero, via reduced island.